Welcome to Global Switzerland. It's the biggest shopping festival in the world, and last year smashed its own record with 25 billion US dollars. On Sunday, November 11, it's that time of the year again when Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba kicks off its annual 24-hour 11/11 Singles Day buying frenzy once again. To discuss the upcoming mega shopping event and hear where Switzerland could be joining this extravaganza, I'm now joined by Jeffrey Towson, expert on digital and consumer China and a professor at Peking University via Skype. Great to see you again, Jeffrey.
Great, thanks for having me.
Mind-boggling figures last year. Alibaba did not offer any forecast for this year's sales, but what is your expectation for this year?
I mean, this is the great game, as everyone has a guess. Last year was $25 billion in GMV. I'm guessing at least 20% up this year, which would get you into the 30 billion US dollar range. And that's pretty much based on just two things, like Chinese consumers keep getting wealthier and wealthier, 300 plus middle class, and they keep using more credit, which is something people don't talk about that much, but there's an increasing use of credit in e-commerce. So I think those two factors probably push you at least 20% up.
Incredible. And already last year we reached a 25.3 billion US dollars to be precise. That was more than the GDP of Iceland or Cameroon, for example. So exceeding also the combined online sales for Black Friday and Cyber Monday in the United States, isn't it? So basically China is totally, ahead of the game there, right? In terms of online shopping festivals.
I mean, it's the biggest shopping festival in the world. It's not even close anymore. I mean, it's a ridiculous multiple of, various US festivals, and it keeps going up. Last year was 25 billion, but that was up about 40% from the year before. So it's still going up. It's huge, and it's getting bigger faster.
And
so
Alibaba,
it's pretty amazing.
Right, and Alibaba, Jeffrey, aims to turn this event into a multi-billion-dollar sales day in the future around the world as well. Is it not a little bit a too ambitious goal for the e-commerce giant, do you think?
No, I mean, if nothing else, Alibaba is very ambitious. Jack Ma has always spoken that he wants Alibaba to last 102 years because that would put it in three different centuries, the 1900s, this century, and the next century. They don't lack for ambition at all, and they actually can execute exceptionally well. So, I wouldn't put anything past them.
But what are some of the risks? I mean, Alibaba is hoping that this new retail strategy will help it be even bigger than the previous year's sales 11/11. But what is the strategy about, and what are some of the downside risks, in your opinion?
Right, the strategy from the consumer side, for all of us that buy stuff, it's basically taking all the online assets and then all the physical assets, which are stores, convenience stores, supermarkets, delivery people, and merging this together. And if you're a consumer, it's going to be amazing. You get one seamless experience that gets you anything you want, whenever you want, immediately. I can order a cup of coffee in my office on my phone. 10 minutes later, someone pedals up and hands it to me. That's consumer real power in this regard. The flip side to this is from the merchants and the brands, this is a very challenging new world because most brands, merchants, retailers, they don't have a robust online presence. So they're trying to move online. And that by and large means working with Alibaba and Jingdong to a large degree. So for them, their world is being turned upside down to some degree. The old game of location, location, location is not going to be how it works.
That is definitely a challenge. Now, last year, if we talk about the consumers and, the kind of items they bought, most people spent their cash on clothes, cosmetics, kitchen utensils. What are they snatching up this time around? And what are you buying, Jeffrey?
What Alibaba has been doing in the last year or so is pushing international, which basically means getting the world's merchants from Switzerland, Europe, everywhere, Mexico, onto this platform so Chinese consumers can buy. And last year, there was about 140,000 merchants involved in the festival. Of those, about 80,000 were outside of China. So it is sort of this internationalization of Chinese consumer buying. And for most brands, they're getting involved mainly because they probably have to, especially if you're a luxury goods maker and things like this. Is there a downside? It's a shopping festival. It's fun. This is a lot about having fun. I generally don't buy anything but electronics. Like I got 10 pounds worth of camera gear and iPhones and iPads. That's pretty much all I buy.
So you're
yeah, I'll look at
also
that.
actively participating in this single-day shopping frenzy. Now, there is, as we said, a lot of excitement around this shopping blitz, but many challenges also for China's online retailers because there's also JD.com, not just Alibaba. It's a neck-on-neck race. How is the economic slowdown in China impacting these players?
I don't really see it. If you look at, let's say, JD.com, Jingdong, their revenue has gone up by a factor of 10 in the last 5 years. They probably have 160,000 employees, up from 120,000 at the start of this year. So if there's a slowdown, it's not huge. And Alibaba's numbers are pretty similar, up 39%. They just had their quarterly earnings coming out, and they're knocking it out of the park again. So, there are aspects of China that are slowing down, but e-commerce doesn't appear to be one of them.
Now, knowing China myself pretty well as well, the rising disposable incomes and, of course, China's 300 million middle-class consumers are also going to help drive the online sales, not just in the big cities, second-tier cities, but also in the poorer provinces going forward.
That's been one of the big stories of this last year. Was the numbers you always hear are online, 400, 500 million e-commerce buyers. But then when you look at WeChat numbers, it's like 1 billion. So the question was, who are all these people that are on WeChat, but they're not necessarily shopping? And a lot of them are fourth-tier cities in villages. And this company, Pinduoduo, which has rocketed upward to be sort of the number 3 e-commerce player, that's who they went after. And they started doing e-commerce that you could do on WeChat. So there's a lot of growth in the 3rd, 4th tier cities, and then villages as well. In the aggregate, all of that spending is larger than in the 1st-tier cities.
Yes, and WeChat, obviously, the Chinese WhatsApp is a big driving factor there as well. But some critics, Jeffrey, say that China's online retail market is close to saturation, that online retailers are forced to push offline as well, and also go overseas to attract new shoppers. What's your take on that?
Definitely, this sort of traditional e-commerce has, it's slowed down. It's not like it was 5 years ago. But what we're really seeing is not that. What we're seeing is digital transformation, which is where people are restructuring and reimagining how you shop in the world, whether it's online or on the street, which are becoming the same thing. When you do that, you get increased demand because you're giving things to people that they really do want, they've just never had before. So these Hema supermarkets, which is Alibaba's new retail supermarkets, they're recording something like 30 or 40% higher revenue than a traditional supermarket.
That's
so
really
this
crazy.
Digital transformation is increasing demand.
Right. Now let's talk a little bit about Alibaba and the recent, change in the executive sphere there. Now this is the 10th anniversary of the event and was created by the current Alibaba CEO Daniel Zhang in 2009. But now with Jack Ma, the co-founder and chairman, set to retire, where do you see the company go from here?
I mean, Daniel Zhang has been critical for a long, long time. And Jack Ma has been traveling the world a lot in the last year, building relationships, bringing merchants on. So it's not a major change in that regard. Jack Ma has traditionally he was the bold visionary. He was the young guy who came up with this. And he's, organizational leader. He created the culture. Daniel Zhang is more like the strategist and the tactician. But really, you get into the ring with either of those guys, you're going to get knocked out. Like they're both incredibly smart, incredibly competitive. They are the number one e-commerce company in China. How many competitors did they have to beat to get there?
Absolutely. And one of the recent news also is the tie-up and kind of collaboration with the luxury company Richemont that produces a lot of watches as well. So is Alibaba tapping more into the luxury segment now, do you think?
Yeah, one of the big moves last year, there were kind of two big events last year. One was new retail going into grocery supermarkets. The other was going into fashion and luxury. And both Alibaba and Jingdong made big moves in that regard. This is an area like the Richemont Alibaba deal is pretty amazing. And you see a lot of the luxury brands, many of whom are in Switzerland, are getting involved in Chinese e-commerce because you basically have to. I mean, Chinese consumers are 30–40% of global luxury sales, and they buy things online. That's how they buy things. They buy things on their phones. So not participating is becoming and less of an option. And Richemont, I mean, they did a partnership deal with Alibaba. You're not going to do better than that. I mean, Jingdong is great too, but that's about as good as partner you'll find for going after Chinese consumers.
Thanks for bringing up Switzerland, Jeffrey. Let's talk about it. Switzerland obviously is on the map for Alibaba as well. Where do you see the opportunities there for Switzerland, and what kind of, further expansion plans do you see?
Right. The biggest thing you see is bringing Swiss brands, Swiss companies onto the platform and putting them in connection with Chinese consumers. And that's a really amazing thing. You can start as if you're a Nestle or Richemont, you're a pretty large company, but most companies are not that big. Those middle and smaller tier companies can start to do this online now, which would, they weren't going to open offices all over China. So the sort of e-commerce cross-border route is giving medium companies an opportunity to reach Chinese consumers. That's pretty amazing. So there's that connection. And then the other thing you're seeing is more and more Chinese tourists coming into Switzerland because everybody loves Switzerland, buying watches and chocolate and doing adventures. So you're going to see more and more tourists arriving and various groups adjusting to serve them better.
It's interesting to see
Alipay,
actually,
like that.
right, what kind of products that Swiss retailers could offer to the Chinese. I've recently interviewed Switzerland Tourism, for example, to offer more travel packages, the watches, the luxury goods, Swiss milk powder as well. Are these the top products that Swiss retailers should offer on Alibaba and JD.com, for example?
A lot of things can take off and do well, and it doesn't have to be the famous companies. Smaller companies can do quite well by being innovative, doing sort of KOL stuff, viral marketing. But definitely the big buckets everyone talks about is always anything to do with health and wellness, vitamins, milk powder, things like that, where people really do want a trusted foreign brand, which Switzerland would be, very high on that list. The luxury products, the watches, those are definitely going to be obvious solutions, products. But there's a lot here that's not predictable. For everything that's predictable, something happens that nobody saw coming.
Exactly.
So,
Now, last year, Jeffrey, of course, it was a huge entertainment festival as well, not just shopping festival. It was a star-studded event. Actress Nicole Kidman, singer Pharrell Williams, and Chinese film star Fan Bingbing, which is in troubles nowadays, they all attended. Who can we expect to turn up this year? Do you have any insight, Jeffrey?
yeah, I'm going back there on Thursday for the festival. For the last year, I've got an opportunity to sort of spend behind the scenes with the management during this day. And what we've heard is there's a lot of Chinese stars, but then there's also Cirque du Soleil is going to be there apparently. Miranda Kerr, who is a Victoria's Secret model. Angela Baby, who maybe people don't know in Switzerland, is a pop star in China. And then a lot of really sort of young Chinese pop stars and celebrities, which will obviously get the most attention for the Chinese consumers.
I'm sure you'll have a lot of fun there at Alibaba's 11/11 Singles Day. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeffrey, and have fun at the event.
Thank you very much.